Hello!
Hi!
How excited are we all to talk about Dead in the Family?
Grabbing the book. Woo!
I love how we've all
That's
got
the right
different
one, right?
hobbies.
I know.
Yeah, that's really cool.
You know what I did, right? Because I've been like getting them with my Audible credits every month for listening to. I thought I had bought them in the right order, but for this one, I must have bought Dead Reckoning before I bought Dead in the Family. So I started like playing the next book, and I was like, "Hold on a minute, like this."
Oh no, that happened to me
Like,
last month. I was
aye,
like,
is that you?
I heard like the first like couple lines, and I'm like, well, I got completely spoiled with a death. I was like, oh great, well now I know this guy's gonna go. And I kind of forgot about it.
Nightmare.
It is a
So, what was
nightmare.
everybody's general thoughts and feelings on the book then?
I enjoyed this one. I enjoy them all, though. I'm a big fan.
No, I was going to say, compared to the ones that you didn't enjoy.
I like this because it seems like things are really getting more complicated and emotional. So it's adding to just like, oh, here's some stuff that's happening, and let's make Sookie do a bunch of random things. But it's like it's really having an emotional impact on not just Sookie, but like all the characters seem to be going through something. So I'm liking them. Like my enjoyment level has been like the whole time, but now it's colliding with like my I don't want to say interest, but yeah, it's good. I'm enjoying. I enjoyed this one.
Good.
How about you?
What about you, Ange? Any other thoughts?
No, I think that it's becoming more complex. The thing, bringing everything together and all the different. I don't want to say too much because then I might spoil what we're going to talk about.
Oh yeah.
I'm the
Spoil the
same.
next book.
I
Are
really
we allowed
enjoyed
to
this
talk
one.
about Eric's gated community yet?
Yeah.
Not yet. You can talk about it now if you like.
Because he's a Viking, he's used to having walls around him.
Didn't he grow up at a castle? It's kind
Yeah,
of like
I think
that
he
in a
did.
way, because they do have. So you're right. It's like that. It's that kind of
Your village has a wall, doesn't it?
yeah, it does kinda. It has at least a guy at the front checking not name tags, but, like, they usually have, like, a car tag or something, or you have to punch in a code.
I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was brilliant. I agree with you guys. Like, everything is just ramping up and up and up and up. And again, like, just forever surprised that there's so much plot happening, but so much character development in such a tiny book. Like, every
Yeah.
single time, it blows my mind.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack. Ooh,
Jack's just announced a book club as well. I'll give Jack a plug. I'll give Jack a plug. She's just announced a new book club. So go check
yes.
that on Instagram. Just pinch my title though.
Fear of missing out. I saw that. I have to go check out their videos. I haven't been watching. Roommates.
So first things first, shall we talk about roommates? We had a wee bit of a switcheroo in this one, didn't we?
Yeah.
I was quite sad Amelia was away because I just really love her as a character. I thought she added just a wee bit of fun and lightness, and she was just such a good friend to Sookie. I really enjoyed having her around. So I was sad when she left at the beginning of this one. I sort of forgot that happens. Like, when I think about the books, like, I remember her so vividly in my head, like, she comes into it way earlier and she's like in it way longer than she actually is.
I think with her as well, she's sort of balanced out Sookie and gave Sookie that friend who just accepted Sookie for Sookie. She didn't really want anything from her, but everything that happened at the end of the last book had an effect on her as well as on Sookie, and also on their relationship dynamics, I think, as well. It must be hard. Do you know what I mean? When all of that happened. I think the same as when sort of like Sookie taking in roommates as well. She just seems to attract them, doesn't she?
Yeah, she does.
She's not roommateless for long.
Oh, poor Sookie. I mean, I don't think she wants to be alone, which is part of like her drive for it's like I have to have a man in my life, but having the roommate was like I don't need no man. So she really it did balance her out, but I think it was like Amelia needed to go. Like not because we didn't like her, but because she really needed to she needs to recover from that last book. But now we have a new friend.
Lord.
I was just rereading that chapter just because I was like, it was kind of awkward, no? It's like your cousin showing up and is like, hey, so can I stay with you?
I think it really shows how much this book, how much Sookie puts her family sort of. She's there for her family regardless.
Yeah.
Just that blood tie means that she'll help you sort of across the board with Claude, with Hunter. Sort of, they're not the sort of best things for Sookie. I think we might be jumping around a bit, but she's struggling in a way to help Hunter, but she knows she has to help him because he's our family. And it sort of impacts her. So she just put family first.
But it was just the way that he approached was kind of like, I don't really want to do this, but I guess I have to do this because I don't have anyone else in my life. So it's like a default thing for Claude, which is such a Claude thing, I guess, to do.
I know.
And I didn't trust him.
I didn't trust him. I was just
I didn't. No. I don't
when
think
he walked up, I was like, "What are you playing?
Yeah.
You are me just here for like what you are saying you're here for. Like that's absolute nonsense." I really didn't trust them. I don't know if I like Claude. Like
no, he's a douche.
Every time he's on page, I'm just like, but like I feel like I want to like him, but like I can't.
Well, he's eye candy, and that's like all he is to others, and that's like his personality. And he knows it. He's like, I'm attractive, and that's the extent of his personality. That's not a personality.
I couldn't stop laughing at the carpooling werewolves and Eric's paperwork to prove he's doing
it.
The random villainous just kept making me laugh for sure. Absolutely. And again, like it's wee things like that she threads through the entire book series that makes it just feel so real. Like,
yeah.
And she says thanks, and join us.
Because she knows the FOMO gets me.
It for sure does. So then next shall we chat a wee bit about the fairies? They were quite prominent in this book, and I feel like we got to find out quite a bit about them that might be worth chatting about.
Yeah. So yeah, in a way. Well, the fairies. Yeah, skip me.
Well, I really liked that Dermot came back into it. And I thought that was really interesting because we were now getting to see Dermot without Niall, and without Niall putting across a narrative, and without him being there to control how Sookie and everybody's thinking. And so when he came back into it, I was like, maybe no as quite as it seems. And then obviously we found out it wasn't, and I felt well, a couple of things about Dermot's scenes. That scene where he came to Sookie and was like, there's somebody watching you, and they're super bad, by the way, gave me the fucking creeps. I was reading it and I was like, oh my god, I had this pure sense of dread. And although there's scary things that happen through the book, none of them have really affected me quite the way that scene did, because he is obviously under some sort of a spell, but he's got this lucid moment, and he's chosen that to be like shit's going to go down, you're in danger, girl. And I was like, oh, this is terrifying. And then obviously with Dermot at the end, we didn't really get all the information as to what's happened to Dermot, but we fully understand that he's been under a spell for so long and somebody has done something to him to make him act in a certain way. And I felt like that was really sad because, you know, Sookie could have a relationship with somebody who isn't just wanting to manipulate her and use her for his own means, like what Niall is and Dermot. But she couldn't because somebody else had bewitched him. And I just felt like that was very sad.
I think as well that moment that you talk about when he was sort of, he says, Sookie, you're bad. That's when I was like, it's going to be Claude. It's going to be Claude. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's trying to tell her, but then it's like, but there's someone in the woods, like, what's going on? And it was sort of, it's a way that Charlene Harris makes you believe something about a character, and then she'll just completely switch it to give them like the backstory and everything like that, and how that then sort of affects the rest of the dynamics of things.
Didn't Amelia meet Dermot before Sookie in the previous book? And she was like, oh yeah, you need to meet this guy because he's the one that looks like her brother, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know, because that was really fishy and odd from the beginning, just because of that. But that whole, like, his brain was kind of scrambled, and she's like, something's off. That made me trust Niall even less. So it's like, this guy's got some motive, and we don't really know what it is, and it's creepy.
No, we don't. We really don't.
I think the way that because the last book ended where there was the big fairy war, and it was supposed to be to keep the fairies sort of free, but then they locked them down anyway, or they gave them that choice of where you want to go. And I think that's had a big effect sort of on everything, especially how we see Niall, because was that his plan all along to that narrative that he was building. So Brandon being back in it was, like the closeness between Sookie and Claude as well, and sort of getting to understand the fairy world more.
Something that I found really weird was that they like to like sleep together and like no like doing the nasty, but actually just like
they need to be they need to be close to each other.
They have to, what is it, co-sleep or something?
That's bizarre to me. Like what? Like, since when was
that?
that?
They have to be close to get together. They have to have like a physical proximity to each other.
Aye, like
and
that
it makes them happy.
Like I like my own space when I am sleeping. I'm like, don't you breathe too close to me? Don't you touch me? Like I just
don't look at me.
Face the other way and have like a tiny wee bit of the bed while I starfish are on my side, please. Like I could not be a fairy for sure. Like that sounds terrible. But I just felt like that really odd. Like I just couldn't imagine that. And I think it's funny that we didn't know that until now, considering like she's been in Claude and Claudette and Claudine's house and stuff. Like at what point was she like, why is there only one bed?
She may not have seen it.
Has she been there?
Wandering the people's bed.
Well, not in the bedroom, but she was in the house, wasn't she?
Yeah, I guess.
Going down a path I wasn't expecting.
Sorry, derailing the conversation as usual.
I don't have an answer for that.
Next, we'll talk a wee bit about Sam in this book, because he's yes, he is quite a prominent character in this book, and then also in the short story, which we'll talk about later. We know that I am no a Sam fan, so what are your guys' thoughts before I rant?
Oh no, you go on your rant first. Go on.
Yeah, you go on your rant.
I just feel like, again, these conversations with Sookie is forever crossing the line. And I'm like, oh, why do you do this constantly? Like, I just feel like he makes things so awkward. And if I was Sookie, I'd just be like constantly cringing around him. Like, I didn't know why she feels so comfortable. Because everything he says, I'm like, oh, like why are you doing this? Like you've just made this weird now. But I also felt like the way that everybody in the town was treating Sam was quite an interesting parallel to how everybody in the town was treating Arlene. Like either last book or the book before. I can't remember at this stage what book's what, but I felt like that was interesting. And obviously how people in the town were then sort of a wee bit wary Sam at times when he's been nothing but lovely to them and like owns this establishment, has welcomed them all in, has had how many parties there for people, like, and he's just like a proper pillar of the community. And so I felt like we got to see like that bias, whereas when it was Arlene, even though she committed like a horrible hate crime, people were like, oh, poor Arlene, but like they can't just accept Sam for who Sam is. So I was like, like it's really interesting social commentary, of course, but like I thought it was just a cool parallel.
See, I like Sam. And I think the thing that you describe about Sam being creepy is Sam struggling with how he feels about Sookie. Because at the end of the day, he employs her. And I think there is a bit in one of the books, I think, when she's still with Bill, when something happens and he's like, oh, she's like, not my employee tonight, or something like that. And Bill's like, no, legally she is. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's this thing with Sam. He's struggling with maybe how he feels about Sookie. But he does still have sort of other relationships, but I think
I feel like I think those relationships are testing Sookie in a way. He's like, so I'm dating this woman who's clearly not meant for me. And what do you think, Sookie? What do you think?
I totally agree. Like, I think that it is totally calculated, because then if Sookie's like, oh, well, I don't think she's for you, he's like, well, I'll date who I want because you date who you want and you don't date me, so you didn't get to have an opinion. And she's like, but you literally have an opinion about everybody I date ever, so...
See, I don't find them creepy. I think that they both struggle with what their relationship actually is. And there's that, like, to and fro sort of going on.
I don't think he's creepy. Yeah, not creepy, but I get it.
It's nice to be creepy. You just talked about him being the pillar of the community and everything. You go, yeah, but he's creepy.
But he is.
He's kind of like an emotional creepy for Sookie.
Yes,
like he's kind of, it's like he's kind of not predator, but kind of acting like he's that friend. You know, the friend that's like, oh, you're gonna put me in the friend zone, and it's like, yes, because you're my friend.
Which I don't like. Like, I don't think you would ever do anything
pursuing your coworker or your employee.
Sort of struggling with like how much he likes.
I think that he, at some point in his life, needs to take responsibility for his own feelings, and I don't feel like he ever does. I feel like he thinks it's Sookie's responsibility to deal with how he feels. Like, no, like, you love her. You've told her this numerous times, whether it's in person or thinking. Like, you've tried to date, it didn't work. She's forever going off with these other people. You're forever overstepping the mark, telling her who she should and shouldn't be dating, and making out it's because you care about her. Like, at what point are you just going to deal with how you feel and stop putting that baggage onto Sookie? Because, like, it's getting me done.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree to that a little bit. But he's overstepping his boundaries.
Struggling with where their boundaries are. Because there's a lot going on as well, isn't there?
There is.
But in this book, it's Sam who tells Ash she needs to go and see Bill.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It's like, you should go see your ex.
And I feel like maybe if anybody else told her, she maybe wouldn't have taken it as seriously. But I think knowing how Sam feels about Bill, that probably prompted her to be like, right, okay, I need to. So then, should we move on to talking about Bill and his sister then? And
in the ball bag. He's still a ball bag.
He is still a ball bag.
Okay, fine.
If he's redeemed himself, Sam, just say so.
I don't know I don't know. I feel like he's sacrificing himself and he's trying to keep his distance from Sookie, but he has strong feelings from her. I think that everything he's done up to this point, he meant well, even though, yeah, he was a douche. He did some bad thing, but he didn't really. I think he needs to be forgiven at this point. He's basically just succumbing to his silver poisoning, and he's kind of like, I think he's checked out. He's like, look, there's nothing for me here, and he's just kind of like, I'm done. And
Kim, what's interesting is like you have been a wee bit more sympathetic to Bill, like through the
Yeah.
entire series. And so like you're like, oh, like he's totally gaying in, blah blah blah, and you're seeing like this softer side of him. Whereas for me, who is like hashtag Bobag Bill, I'm like, he knows he has a sister, but is choosing not to
Yes.
here. A wee bit of me's like, is he allowing himself to get ill so that Sookie then needs to look after him and then try and save him and like draw her back in a wee bit, because if she saves him, she cares. And then he can play on that a wee bit to manipulate her back into a relationship. Like that's where my mind goes when it comes to Bill, because I'm just like, I trust nothing about you. Like,
I think Bill wanted to die in a
me too.
way, because he not only did he only like made a comedic suggestion that Sookie sleep with him because that might help, and then he was like, I'm just joking. Like and I think he genuinely meant, he's like, I'm not gonna, we're done. But he went and reached out to the Bellefleurs, and he came out to them basically to let them know that
that
they're
was awkward.
related. It
Wasn't
was awkward, but it needed to be done before
Yeah.
the
I
lady
just
of the house died.
imagine being Portia in that situation.
I know.
Like,
That's all I could think of.
know?
He's like,
My
yeah.
Like you maybe
spending
could
all
have
the
had like
money.
a conversation with her beforehand. Be like, by the way, before we tell the rest of your family and in front of the rest of your family, like this is the script. Like before being like, oh aye, by the way, great granda.
Well, I think he would be once removed or something like that, but still
Yeah.
it's so weird. He's like, yeah,
Legally,
by the way,
it's probably okay.
you banged your cousin or your great aunt or uncle or whatever. But no, I think that he was saying goodbye, and he was like giving something away to so it's like they're like little tells for suicide. And I think that he was like falling in line with a lot of those past. He'd given up. He didn't give a shit. And then even when Sookie broke into his house to find that CD-ROM thingy, he's like, yeah, I was wondering why you're at the house, but you didn't seem to give a shit.
Yeah. And
Because
I thought the same thing. And I think it's interesting how, because vampires are always portrayed as like being immortal, it's sort of, it has to be some sort of physical fight that kills them, like a stake to the heart or something like that. Where in Charlene's world, we've seen them go and meet the sun themselves when they're dealing with this longevity of the life. And now we've discovered that the silver poisoning, like they can't just heal themselves, that there is other vulnerabilities around them. And I do think Bill had just come to the point where he's like, is my time actually up, done?
Yeah, but it was also just a theory too that his sister might actually help him with that. They weren't sure 100%. He was just like, he clearly had reason to not reach out to her, and I don't think it was because he's like trying to get to Sookie. I think that he just didn't want to reach out to her, and I think that, I don't know, I think that that's going to come about in the next book.
And I think that's the dynamics in families as well, can be like that. So it's sort of shown these vampire sort of structures with their maker and how they're quite similar to a family structure, that not everything's always rosy in Charlene's world for them. They struggle with some of the same things that everybody else
That's
does.
a fair point. Yeah. I did feel sorry for Bill when we got the backstory about his sister. Oh God, what was his maker's name? Was it Lorena?
Lorena,
Aye.
because she looks like his wife.
What
Yeah.
a cow! Like,
It's
imagine
kind of evil.
twisting and hurting somebody as much as Lorena hurt Bill. Like, and that did make me feel a wee bit sorry for him. I'm not gonna lie, but still think he's a ball bag. But obviously we know that Lorena had quite a possessive relationship over Bill. We know that there are, certain things that makers can command their children to do, and they sort of just need to do it. We saw that for the kidnapping stuff, and so just imagine Lorena loving Bill so much that she doesn't want him to go and be with anybody else, so she tries to give him the ultimate life partner, so that he'll stay with them both forever. It was just so twisted, so weird.
It was the way Sookie was saying, she looked familiar.
I know. It's such a shame, and I did really feel for Bill.
But that's not love either. Lorena didn't love. She was obsessed with Bill for some reason, and it's really creepy.
She loved the control and the power, I think, over Bill. It wasn't genuine affection at any point.
I think that's another thing with Charlie's vampires, that all are different, and I think it sort of brings out some of their human traits, but to the extreme in when they've been turned. They're not stereotypical vampires. Some of them do have these completely different personalities.
I know, it's like nature nurture between actual parenting kids, how much of this is just their personality and who they are, and how much it is based on their past and how their maker has handled things, in their relationship with their maker. Because obviously, one of the most positive maker stories that we see throughout the entire series is Eric and Pam. And Pam dotes on Eric dotes on Pam, and they have just such a great relationship, where we've seen really dark and twisted ones, like Bill and Lorena. And so it's just really interesting to see how much of an impact that has, and how even though everybody is the same and they all have this same trait and they're all vampires, that they are all different depending on where they come from, who their maker was, what their life was like. I just think it's very interesting. And again, some good social commentary that, not everybody for one group or characteristic is, the benchmark or has the right to speak for everybody, because everybody within that set group are different people with different views and opinions and feelings.
Yeah, but I think it's that lack of time. The lack of time, their longevity. They could live on forever and ever. So I think a lot of that makes impact too. It's you know what? Fuck it. I'm gonna be a dick.
That's my attitude now.
I don't know if I think that you're either gonna be your good and evil side are gonna come out more in a way.
No, that makes sense, because I guess there's less consequence to them.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna live forever and you're gonna be a mass murderer, then you gotta be you gotta tone it down. So you gotta be a certain type of citizen, which is why it's so nice to see people the vampires. You've got, what the hell does Bill do? But Eric and Pam, they have their nightclub, and it's they're working class citizens.
Yeah.
They're small business owners.
Yeah.
They have to put up with the same shit that every other and they have to keep it running forever. They're not made out of money.
That's
they're
that. And
they're
Jack
still
was
living
saying,
things.
they've got to do all the paperwork and the tax returns, and they've got to do everything properly. They can't just.
And Eric's seeing a business decline.
We'll just move on to Eric.
Yeah, we'll move on with Eric. He's seeing a business decline since, pretty much. It's not easy with the. Okay, we're gonna ignore what I was gonna say there. But yeah, Eric, he lives in a gated community. He has a basement, which is not typical of Louisiana living, and I think I think it's because of their water table, but yeah.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. How about
See,
that?
in England, it's very rare to have a basement as well. It's only old
lofts.
Victorian houses have basements.
Really? Well, I have a basement.
No, we do not.
Another house underneath the ground in America.
It's a basement. We do our laundry in there. It's
So
not
obviously
finished.
Eric was a prominent character in this book as well,
Yes.
and Sookie's main love interest in this book also.
But they're having some, I'm gonna say marital problems in the beginning. I mean, they are kind of married. They're vampire married, but Sookie's going through stuff, and Eric reads it, but he's like, "All right." And this is where I love Eric. It's like Eric is like, "All right, when you get through, we'll get through, but in no way is it him." He's like, "It's not me. It's definitely not me. I'm all on my game." But
You know
but
what
it's
I
definitely
quite like
Eric.
about Eric as well as a partner though, like, is everybody else that Sookie has ever been with has expected her to drop everything else in her life and to make their relationship the priority.
Yeah.
Whereas Eric is a grown up, so like he understands that sometimes other things maybe need to be a priority, and it doesn't mean that that relationship is no longer important or like working. Like, and so I really appreciate that when he senses that Sookie's going through all this stuff, he's like, right, this is important, and we need to have a chat here. We're going to be fine, but like we can do that after you've dealt with all of this, because I also appreciate like you have a million other things going on at the minute. Like you maybe didn't have the heat space for this. And I just love that, like, because I feel like everybody else just tries to overcrowd her. They try to, either put their thoughts across so that she knows what they're feeling, or like it's just constantly like, how do you feel? Where are we? What's going on? Like, and they just didn't give her that time. Whereas I feel like he knows she needs that. And so he takes a wee bit of a step back and is like, we'll talk about it when we get a chance to talk about it. But like always reassures her that it's still important for them both. And I just think like it shows such a great healthy relationship dynamic that we maybe haven't really seen Sookie in before. And I really loved that.
Eric is definitely a giver. We know that.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's Saturday morning. But in the relationship as well, and I think in a way that does help Sookie, but some of this, I don't know how influences are with these blood bond, but then it's now going both ways.
Yeah.
So so some of the things that Sookie's now feeling, she's thinking, is it because I'm sort of becoming too much like Eric? But I think when you in relationships with people, their traits do sort of naturally, you find a middle ground somewhere. So yeah, I do like the way that they seem to be having this is probably our first grown up, like, serious, but it was pretty heartbreaking when he told her why he couldn't get to her, because she was resenting that in a way, wasn't she? And then he
She was.
How's he?
It's like, why was Bill my? But he's also kind of like, he gives her the space that she needs, and he's not harping on her like, where were you, or where are you going, or he definitely gives her space, and it's like whenever she needs him, he can be there for her, and he's been accommodating. And
Yeah,
even like
it's been like that from the beginning.
Yeah, he has. But when Claude came to visit, or well, to move in, she didn't want to tell him right away. She's like, "All right, so we're gonna put this on to you in a funny." It was kind of like a funny way that she was kind of like approaching him about it. But it's like, so when Pam gets here to pick me up for whatever, it's like, just tell her not to freak out.
Tell her not to eat Claude.
Yeah.
Yes.
She didn't tell him either, did she? I don't think she did. Not right away.
No, I think he arrived at a house at one point and Claude was there. And he was like, "What's this?"
But I also love the
yeah.
fact that Claude was worried that if the vampire was visiting, like, am I going to be safe?
Eric is a giver.
But Eric has a reputation, and Claude was like, "Oh, I gotta see this guy," because he's
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever seen him, and he wanted to go and see him when he was like sleeping over at Sookie's. He's like, "Oh, I want to see."
I know. Gives a wee peek.
Yeah, it's like,
So
"Don't wake
then,
up the vampire, please."
I think with Eric is Eric is what I was going to mention when
Oh.
Hunter's there and Hunter says there was the man in my bedroom. He's like in the closet. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the little kid. I forgot about him.
but I think it's shown a different side, and I think that's what Charlie Harris does, doesn't she? She makes you think this is going to be this type of character, but then you find out all this backstory and everything like that, and how they interact, and I just found that funny.
Yeah, definitely. So then one of Eric's big storylines is obviously that his maker comes into this book and we meet his brother, I guess, and Alexei. So what was everyone's thoughts about that?
You know, not like Charlie and Harris to take an actual historical person and put them in to our story. Definitely an interesting take on what happened to the Romanovs.
Yeah.
And definitely interesting the character of what he's like as a vampire, which he comes across as sort of very what was I looking for? Sort of like a prince, isn't he? He wants everybody to look after him and do as he says, and he can do whatever he wants because of who he is.
Yeah, that was what he was. But we saw that before with Bubba.
Mhm.
Or yeah. So
Yeah.
he died kind of awkwardly. So he's a little messed up. So it's like it's not a failed vampire, but it's one that's going to be stuck in this not so healthy dependent way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Bubba's just living off cats, but or whatever. But then you've got the little Romanov kid that's like he wants to rule everything basically.
Because why shouldn't he?
Yeah.
He's a Romanov.
Yeah.
I thought Sookie's reaction to Eric's maker coming into it was really interesting. And I think that a lot of that was based on her previous experience with Lorena, like, because obviously that ended badly, which is fair. But I really liked how, I guess, defensive she got to Eric. Like, I felt like she had his back in this book as much as he has always had her back. And she's maybe just not had the opportunities to show it a lot of the time. But I liked that she did in this one, and she was like, if you weren't his dad, like, you would be near us right now, like, just so you know. And she was always just like very upfront about how she was feeling, and I really liked that because we've seen her through all the series really conceal how she feels a lot of the time. Obviously, like, when she's in danger, I appreciate she needs to conceal it, but I feel like she's always just sort of this polite wee thing, and like this time she was just like, nah, you're a dick, like, and you need to know.
But it's also baggage. Like, it's not just emotional baggage that she's been roped into because they also have the blood bond. So they
Yeah.
can just pop into her house whenever the hell they feel like it, unless she revokes, which she probably should have
Yeah.
at that point. But like,
Yeah,
sorry, Eric.
because that's another thing that I think I've never seen that. I know you have to invite vampires in, that's vampire law, but the fact that once you let one of the family in, sort of their maker can then come in, it just opens up a whole new dynamic, doesn't it? And she's like,
Yeah.
because I have to revoke Eric, like, she would have to revoke Eric. Do you know what I mean? It would create a bit of a family drama, wouldn't it? And
But
really, just
yeah.
Pam's stepmom.
Oh my god, I've never thought about it like that.
I've just had that thought. Which then made us go back to when they went straight in the...
She
Oh, that's helped me.
They're friends now.
The show's
She's
so
really
well
pushing
when-
that too.
yeah, when
Yeah.
stripping together.
It's like old classic stepmom too, because she's like, "Oh, we're a lot friendlier now."
But Pam dresses more like the suburban soccer mom, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She for sure does.
Just like 100 years older.
So we learned a lot more about the blood bond with Eric's maker coming back into it as well, because obviously we know that the previous books that Eric and his maker had a sexual relationship, and that's pretty standard for makers and new vampires before they go their separate ways. And, you know, that was a wee bit of a concern for Sookie. She didn't want Eric to be having a sexual relationship with his maker anymore. You know, she is very much a monogamous kind of gal, and she really wanted to enforce that on Eric and just let him know, like, I'm not going to be okay with it. But then Eric hit us with the realisation that if he is told that he needs to have sex with his maker, then he needs to comply, which just adds, like, I guess, a whole new power dynamic to the maker vampire relationship that we didn't know about before. We knew that they could be compelled to do things, but I don't think anybody's ever explicitly spoken about it in regards to sex. And that was just quite horrible. We could see that Eric felt quite vulnerable about this as well, because he very much is in love with Sookie and surprisingly only wants to be with Sookie. And so, like, you could see that he felt really uncomfortable the longer his maker was there, that there might be a sexual expectation. And then obviously, you know, I don't remember his maker's name, but anyway,
Oh yeah, I was hoping you'd remember. Like...
him and Alexei have a very involved sexual relationship, and Alexei alluded to the fact that no way that was quite as consensual as Alexei would have liked. And although Alexei was a terrible, terrible person, well, vampire, and obviously I didn't like him, I did feel sorry for him in that regard. And I guess it's no ever something that I've really thought about, is the power that a maker has over their vampire children in regards to sex. And I just felt really horrible for Eric and for Alexei. And I feel like, again, we're just seeing this more vulnerable side of Eric. And again, like, vampires are not infallible. It's not just, you know, humans who are going to be raped or sexually abused or assaulted. Like, the vampires, it can happen to them as well. They just didn't have the power to say no either.
Apius. Is that how you pronounce it? APPIUS.
We'll go with it. Why not?
Oh, Ocella. Ocella. Oh, I'm trying to find it too. I'm like, oh, it's Ocella. OC. He's like, oh no, you can't call me that. You call me this.
Apius,
Oh, yes.
Ocella.
Apius Ocella.
Yeah.
It was complicated and very old. And he did come from the time of Jesus Christ, although he never met him.
Yeah. I love it when she sort of references like
the carpenter?
BC. Yeah. You know what I mean? As a point of reference, but references him as a man. Like, yeah, I know he was a man. Or he was in our time, he wasn't really that big a deal. Do you know what I mean? But he's become quite popular.
Oh, Apius Livius. Apius Livius, because it's like, Livius? Doesn't that mean like living?
So was he? Yeah.
Apius Livius. And then they called him Ocella or Ocella or something like that. I don't know. He's like, you can call me Apius Livius. You can't call me by my nickname.
Not yet.
I thought that it was interesting as well, as obviously we're confronted with, like, child abuse and sexual assault for the first time in the vampire world. And when Sookie's talking to Eric about it, he's like, well, he was that age and it was all right in his time. And Sookie's still like, no, but he's legitimately a child. And I thought that was really interesting, because when older people tend to be a wee bit bigoted, the defence is, oh, well, it was all right to say these things or hold these opinions or do that thing in their time. And that is a bullshit excuse for me. I don't know.
It is.
Do not agree with that whatsoever. You change with the times, but I felt like that was, again, some great social commentary for Charlene Harris, being like, right, okay, so you'll use that excuse when it's bigotry or when it's outdated opinions and views. Will you tolerate that excuse when it's paedophilia? And if you don't, probably not a good excuse, is it?
Yeah, she touched on it in
Dallas.
Yeah.
What's his name? And that's basically, and he was remorseful too. He knew.
It's one of the reasons he wanted to meet the son.
Yeah. And he also looked really young too, though.
Yeah.
So it was confusing. It was like, oh, this is weird.
There's then also the commentary, though, that's been made that when they turn them vampire, although they stay at that physical age, they're actually mature. And it's sort of that balance, isn't it? And the commentary about the different dynamics, through history, how things are. But then definitely having that more modern day standard, thankfully, of right, well, it's still not right. We've progressed, and we're now at this point where it's not right.
Yeah.
To do that. So it's interesting how she gets some of these really complex ideas woven into a book that has light-hearted moments and is sort of quite modern. And you could read it as sort of a sort of vampire mystery and not even think about it, but it's the more layers of the book that she puts in, comes back round.
Yeah. It's like, well, what if this person became a vampire? How would you handle it in this situation? What if the president of the US became a vampire? How would you handle this? What if this celebrity did? So it's kind of interesting. But I like how she uses the historical characters, like people that are deceased. So it's like, all right, they're not gone, kids.
Hi.
We know you were a fan or you're curious
The conspiracy theory is they all died, but this one became a vampire.
Yeah.
And he actually mentions his sister Anastasia, doesn't he? In it.
Yes.
And like, no,
Yeah. And then one of the other big topics in this book then was national registration. How did you guys feel about that?
Oh God.
For the shifters compared to I think it showed how different groups attract differently, and this sort of how humans react to things.
It's very Nazi.
Small changes is okay, but now we're worrying about this group over here because they see the shifters. They seem to have this impression that they can control the vampires to some degree because the vampires sort of planned this thing, didn't they, and came out and had the vampire forum thing. Do you know what I mean? It was well planned, and we want to pay taxes, and we want to do this, and we want to do that. And they'd never been in society before. But then all of a sudden, the shifters were like, you know what? But we've always been here, and I think that shook them more. Like, oh my Lord, and they can change it. They shift into animals, and do you know what I mean? They can be unpredictable, and the sort of the humans didn't deal with it well.
I think it's because we have a lot of hunting, and I don't know, you guys probably have seasons and things like that too, and it's like, I think it could be a safety precaution in some way for like if you have like, well, there's never been a werewolf. There's never like a wolf season, but still, it's like if you have someone who turns into a rabbit and there's like a rabbit season, you want to know if there's you could be potentially killing someone, but you know that that person would be like more aware of things. They wouldn't be like
Yeah.
hanging out. So I
Aye,
don't
they're
know.
not
I
just
don't
gonna
agree
be
to the
like,
net.
"Oh, it's rabbit season, let me get my tail on," like, and they're away out, like.
Yeah, yeah. And they're like, I'm gonna try to chill out inside my house and just hop around in here because it's illegal to fire, in a resident
I
or
think,
whatever.
I totally agree with you, Sam. It came across as like pure Nazi behaviour, like the government just wanting to know who you are, where you are, what you're getting up to. Whereas like in the UK we have like the census that comes out every year, and it's like
Every year?
10
yeah,
years.
10 years.
Okay, I was gonna say we do it like every 10
Like,
years.
so it's like obviously who's
Or maybe
staying in
more.
your house, like are you religious, what's your sexual orientation, things like that.
Yeah.
And that's so that they can get an idea of who's living in the community, so that they can then put provisions in place for like appropriate people within their council areas, and make sure that like funding is going to like groups that are like needing it and things like that, which is fine. I didn't feel like that's what this was. This was very
No.
much like we need to know who you are, what you're up to, like.
Yep.
And it's mandatory.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we kind of went through this when Trump took office. I think it was that same year, he requested that all the states collect voter data from the residents. And the towns have this. I live in a very small state, and even some of the larger states, with exception to like New York and California, there's not like huge populations to in the westerns, like in the Midwest and stuff. They're big states, but they're still small towns. So the towns keep tabs on people. They know how because if you do vote, you have to register. At least in my state, because we do primaries but they had requested that the states comply and to let them know they wanted voter detail on who was registered as Democrat, Independent, and Republican. And some states said, we're not doing this, but I live in a state that's kind of purple. It's run by a Republican governor, and there's also our like attorney general, I believe, is Republican. I can't remember, but they were like, yeah, all right, we'll do this. So that was concerning because they're making it so that they could reach out to people or target them differently. And
Yeah.
I do live in what would be known as like a red town because they're people with money, and they generally do lean into Republican and libertarians. We have a big libertarian party, but they're mostly families. So it was really interesting data that they got out of that. But now they can do targeted advertisement, which is really concerning. And I hate that. I hate it so much. I hate targeted advertising more than anything. I'm like, it's awful. So that's how it's like leaning into. It's like, all right. So then they come up with some cool things for it could be a decent thing if they have programming for these the wares and the shifter community, but they're not going to, they're not.
No.
They're like, we just want to keep tabs on you. And it's
Exactly.
like, it's what you feel like. You don't want the government to intervene, but I also felt like I don't want Bill Compton intervening either.
But Bill's is more like an ancestry for vampires. It is more like the way that the census is used when it's gathered for the benefit of the community, and then it's locked, isn't it, for like 100 years, and then it becomes sort of like, if you're interested in your family history or the history of your area, whatever, then you can glean that information out of the census that you might not have known. So it's the use of the information. Like, I'll sell my name and email address for as many points as I can get. Do you know what I mean? But I have a separate email address for that.
Yeah.
So, like, I do collect points and things like that, and know that they collect data with that, but also at the same time, there's other things that I've got different addresses for and use different things, and it's sort of protecting what data you allow out there. It's once it becomes mandatory that you have to do something, that I think that's the line. Freedom of choice. Yeah, once it becomes mandatory, like, why do you want it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which a lot of people, when we went through the COVID pandemic, that was a lot of the discussions then about when they wanted people to register on the app and carry it with them, so they knew, like, okay, but if there was talk about it being mandatory and people got uneasy, like, no, and why do you need to track where I am, and like all of them sort of questions started to be asked, because there has to be a line.
Yeah. But even like Bill's little CD-ROM is out of date.
Yeah, but his
That
is
happens
more,
really quickly.
his is more like the vampire's family tree, isn't
Ancestry.
it?
Yeah.
I
But
mean, because he even says it can be out of date, like you just said, like this was just the last known location. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of sort of that in there.
so we volunteer our DNA for these types of things, and the vampires are doing just the same. It's like, yeah, it's a voluntary basis. If you want your family history, here you go.
I'll get mine done. I'll be disappointed if I'm not a Viking, but there you go.
We had a return. Yeah, favourite character in this book, Alcide. How was everybody feeling about him?
He's a bit of like a...
I don't have any romantic feelings towards him. I know you have like a crush or whatever, but he's like a conspirator.
He's like a character who shows how when someone's status in either like socially or in their job changes, how they change. He's just a perfect representation of, he used to be this really nice guy here, and now he's just a douche.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, Amy.
No, I know. And I just, him like 3 books ago and Sookie would have just been like divine and so perfect and brilliant, and I shipped them so hard. And then in this book, I'm like, oh, why do you like this? Like,
Charlie just messed his life up.
She totally did. I just feel like you're right. Like, he was such a lovely guy, and they had so many of the same views and opinions and dreams and ideals as Sookie, but like they have just totally drifted. Like, Sookie has used everything that happened to her as like a real motivator to go forward and be better and do good and help people. Maybe not so much at the end of this book, but we'll talk about that, and like really put a focus on our family and our friends and our community, like in our relationships, whereas Alcide's just sort of been like to everything, like, and has completely and utterly destroy his life, and like it just holds so much anger and hatred and like a proper chip on his shoulder, as opposed to just actually dealing with his emotions in any positive or constructive way. Like, I think he just has the attitude now life owes him, and he'll get what he wants to get at anybody's expense. Obviously, we see him use Sookie in this book, and I was just like, this isn't you, man, come on.
Well, he has that power over her because, I mean, she did kill his ex-fiance or whatever. And he's kind of, oh, there's activity.
Had her parents' DNA done, Ange, and I'm mostly Irish, but part Scandinavian, so a bit Viking.
Oh, that's cool.
I'd be shocked if you didn't have some Viking. That's surely really prominent in the Northeast.
It is prominent. Yeah. And when I've done my family history, I can only get my family back to Sunderland or North Yorkshire or Ireland. So I have to be Scandinavian. You know what I mean? If I'm not, I need to consider my heritage.
He's so like boss. He's like, I'm the leader. It's kind of like, he's not so much like, there's a difference between a boss and a leader, and he's more like boss to me than it's like, but that's like, it's inherited into the what is it, into that power dynamic. It's like
Yeah.
you just become this person, and it's like, oh, did he just become a douche too?
I know.
Is that a part of the job description?
Like, oh, I'm so alpha. Like,
Yeah.
like, see, 4
Like,
books ago, you were a cute, cuddly wee sweetheart. Like, I didn't like this, you.
yeah.
Very
Yeah.
disappointing. But
Yeah. And
the
I
ship
think
has died, ladies.
Jack doesn't
The
like
ship
him
has
anymore
died.
either.
I lost interest ages ago. I'm like, well, we didn't see him very much, and we got a
No,
lot more of him this book, and
yeah.
a lot of him that we didn't even want. He's like, hey, can we borrow your land? That's I think.
Yeah.
That's the best
Yeah, you can borrow my
adaptation.
land. Hey, can you help us figure out who murdered this person? Whatever. Sure.
It was funny to see Sookie out of it because we rarely see her lose control because she's always constantly got to be like controlling her powers and now she's even having to control herself around the vampires, which is a recent development in the past few books that we haven't properly explored yet. And so there just isn't a lot of opportunity for her to let loose and lose control. But obviously she had to in this instance, and she was just doing it like woo, like all over the place. And I thought in that moment, to be honest, that maybe she was going to let something slip a wee bit about like been able to read the vampires' minds or something, like while she was under the influence, and that's how they were maybe going to find out she could do that. So like when I was reading that full scene, I was like so stressed. I was like, oh my god, Sookie, say nothing, say nothing. Very worried for her.
Who we're talking about next? Oh,
geez.
Yeah, so
She's getting vengeful.
she is. She really is.
but
And
is
she's
this
noticed it too.
Eric's influence over her?
Yeah, I think that's the question. But she seems to be like, I want them dead. I want them dead. No, none of this. She's not like effing around. And I question that too now that you mention it. It's like, is that Eric's influence or is that Sookie like, I've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
You cross my path, you go.
It probably works the other way. Like, is Eric only softer side and everything? Is that more Sookie's influence on?
They're switching personalities. No.
So,
I know it's interesting, and like we do see a real dynamic shift between Sookie and Eric this book. We see him being really vulnerable and really hopeless at points. Like, Sookie's saying to him, like, we need a plan, like we need to get out of this, and he's like, I don't know how to help you, like I don't know, mate. And so there was like a total shift there. So I am wondering if maybe that is a huge impact to the blood bond because like if it was wee small personality changes, fine, and that's normal, and I would get that. And obviously, we spoke last chat about Sookie's mental health a lot, and so like, she's suffering, and I would understand why she's having a hard time and why she maybe is feeling a wee bit more spiteful and maybe a wee bit more down in the dumps, whatever. But to just be like, oh, you're a nuisance, so I just want you deeding out the way. Like I just feel it's no very Sookie. And Eric, I know, for Eric to be so distraught and so helpless is no him either. Like, even in the most dire situations, he's so confident, like, that he'll just take a gamble on something. Like, and it might work, it might not, and he'll maybe have to have a fight at the end of it, but he's always got an idea as to what he'll do. And, like, we just didn't see that at all this book. But then at the same time, it's like, is that just the influence because his maker was there? And so he was worried about losing control, that he felt like he had already lost it because somebody else was there who has all this influence over him. It's really hard to tell.
I think Sookie started off at a point where she's been at her lowest that she ever was. It's sort of a realistic interpretation of if someone goes through that much, it has to affect them.
Yeah.
And that's where she was at the beginning. Everything had happened. A friend had sort of moved out. So she was just like in this place. And I think it was part of that. She just really had enough. she's had enough of people coming in and like creating chaos around her. But then she found the things that sort of the time she was spending with Hunter, the sort of spending time with Jason and his new sort of girlfriend. She was finding these small bits of happiness. And I think that's sort of a representation of if you are in sort of a depression in some way, but you don't just come out of it like, I'm not well, and now I'm okay. It is those small little steps that she's taken to sort of get back to, which I don't think she'll ever be the Sookie that she was right at the beginning.
Oh yeah, no.
Or even like 4 or 5 books in, she's completely different now.
But going back to the fairies and that they need that proximity, does the blood bond is that influenced at all by the proximity of Okela and the little Romanov? Or because they have an influence over Eric, or well, at least Eric's maker would have an influence with Eric.
Yeah, and then
but since she has some bond with these people, that's also influencing her in some way. But I'm wondering if because they were, I mean, we saw this at the very beginning of the book before they even showed up, because she's like, yeah, this guy needs to go. I want him dead because he kept Eric from helping me, and he's clearly a danger to me. He needs to go. So, but it's getting like more and more. She's like, all right, he's got to go, and now this guy's got to go.
Yeah. She's sort of in survival mode for her.
Yeah,
Even when Maker comes onto the scene, like she maybe doesn't feel like she's directly affected by him. Like he's maybe not going to come in and just kill her outright because Eric would never stand for that. But like the fact that he might even pose a wee bit of a threat to her and Eric's relationship, she's like, "You dead." Like, absolutely no having it. Like, whereas she would never
been through this before.
Aye. She would never like that before.
I know how to deal with exes.
Yeah. I know how to deal with Vegas. I killed them.
Love Sookie and Jason.
Interlopers.
As someone who has a close relationship, I feel pleased that they're starting to really have a relationship. Yeah. Jason seems to have grown up. He definitely does. I'm hoping we get a wee bit of more of Jason in the next few books because I feel like I like having him when he's nice, Jason. I don't like when he's a ball.
Well, I think he's fun. He's like party Sookie.
Yeah. I think he is just mature, isn't he? And that's part of life as well. He's been through quite a lot up until this point, so like he's just matured and been affected by.
But he goes with the flow. He's like really chill and mellow about things too. He's like, all right, so my wife, I'm a widower now.
But he's still got his new girlfriend.
He's already got a new girlfriend.
That's very enough, though, isn't it?
Yeah. We're moving on. He's just got a weird approach to life that's contrast to Sookie's.
Yeah, definitely. So then there's the short story.
Oh, I love the short story.
Well, I mean, can we call it a short story? It was pretty long, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, it was a novella.
Is it technically a novella? I don't know.
It was technically a novella. It was like over 100 pages. It was a novella. It took me a while to get through it because it felt like we were doing the same thing over and over again. But I think that it left us off in like the right space, but that brought us back to Sam and whether or not he should really be in the relationship that he's in, and that he brings Sookie. He had already asked her to go to that wedding, but
I'm sure that if somebody had asked me, like if my friend or co-worker, and he's our boss, we've got to remember this, it said, will you come to this wedding with me? But because they seem to have a close friendship as well, and you say yes, but then they start dating someone else, you would have that conversation and say, you know what?
Yeah.
It may be more appropriate that you take your
actual girlfriend
in a relationship.
But he's like, there's no way that his family would get along with her. And it's like, that's a problem. That's really just a red flag that you're waving at Sookie and at yourself.
Like, we know how much Sam's family mean to him. Like, he speaks about them all the time. Like, so we know he's so family orientated. So the fact that, again, he's just choosing to put Sookie in that position, like, inappropriate.
And they're
Yeah.
pretending too. She's like genuinely pretending to be his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's kind of weird. It's like, I know how it is, but she doesn't want to put any more stress on them. It's like she's just too accommodating to Sam.
Yeah, because
That's
Sam
when I was like,
wants to give his mum this sort of picture perfect life that he is living, especially after what happened to his mum being shocked when she came out as a shifter to her sort of second husband, isn't it? 'Cause Sam's dad. So, like that sort of thing. I think he wants to just show his mum, look, you know, I'm all right here. I've got this nice lady who's my girlfriend, and when you meet her, she's lovely. You know what I mean? Because Sookie does come across as charming.
yeah. And they didn't really tell them right away that she was a telepath either. So it was like, all right, there's something about her, but here you go.
I love the fact they put her in the sewing room.
Oh, I know. On a pull-out bed. She never talked to Eric while she was there either. She talked to him like once. And so it added the strain to the end of the book. It was like it has added more. So I'm like, oh God, what's things gonna be like when we get back into this?
I know. I'm a wee bit nervous picking up the next one for that because I didn't know like if they're going to be together, if things are going to go a wee bit south. Like I really don't know where it's going to go. So exciting.
He didn't really offer to help either, which is she's like,
I know, and just like, do not spoil.
She's trying. She's making effort.
I remember like the big plot points each of the books, but I don't remember like who Sookie's with at what points. So I'm like,
I think we're getting into the point of the reread now, aren't we? Where like I've finished them and I can't remember some of the more intricate details of all of the books, but I do know how it ends.
Yeah. One of the other
these lines are getting harder and harder for me.
Quinn comes back in the short story.
Yes.
Yeah.
He came back in and I was going to say nicer, but I don't know whether nice is the right word to use. He came back in a way where he was a bit weird. You know, I would call Quinn creepy for sort of cracking out. That's creepy. Sam not creepy. Quinn tracking out creepy.
That was creepy.
But then showed sort of more of his sort of leader style and how protective he is of the community, which included Sam's family, because I did like the way that all the supernatural sort of came together. And it was an interesting, I think, narrative on social media, because this would have been wrote when social media was quite a new thing.
Yeah.
And that's why we talk about it, that thing on the internet.
I thought it was interesting with the Twitter.
Talking about message boards and
because they mentioned Twitter, I think, and I was like,
yeah,
I didn't think that was really a big thing at this point in when this was written, or when it would have been written, but maybe it was.
But I think that was the point, that there was now these new ways that they were communicating with each other. It wasn't just the like picking up the phone and calling someone. Like all these people arrived, how someone put it on a message board.
I love how Sookie's like last to tech. She's like, I don't know how to use no email, and she's like, boop, 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 boop.
That's me now.
She's like very resistant. She's very much like me, though. I was like,
Amy's going to start telling.
I don't.
Amy's going to start telling me that lives are like 45 minutes before they are. That's what my sister does. If we're going anywhere, she'll say you need to be here by such and such, and it's always got some buffer room in there.
Yeah.
I'm the worst though. I'm always like ridiculously early to things. Like I just need to be there like an hour before anything. I'm terrible.
When I was travelling to Glasgow, I let Amy know that I was driving. I was still getting text messages of it. Are you nearly here yet?
I'm the worst. I'm the worst.
I told her I'm an hour and a half away and half an hour later, so we nearly here yet. I mean, I did get lost in our defense. So,
You were an hour and a half. You're like, I'm nearly there.
yeah. And then ended up ringing. I go, I'm at an IKEA. She's like, that's miles away.
Aye, that's Greyhead, no Barhead.
Well, we have the expression like it's just up the street. Like Maine's just up the street, but it's like, yeah, it's like a 3-hour drive. But yeah, it's just
I've
like
fallen foul of that with my American family. My brother tells me everything's 20 minutes away. He misses like 2 or 3 hours.
Well, it's by the way what is it? The expression, the way the crow flies or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, it's only like an inch on the map, but it still takes you 3 hours to get to Boston.
Yeah.
Because you're not factoring in all of the. Boston is 40 minutes from where I live, 45 minutes from where I live, but it will take you 3 hours to land a parking spot.
So then, next up,
Oh yeah,
we are reading Dead Reckoning, and I have a wee switching couple.
Oh, you got the same book. Oh,
yeah. I've got the hardback though. Can you tell when I must have started reading them? Because this is when I was then caught up and I was reading them as they were being released.
So have we all got like a wee smoochy couple?
Yeah.
where? Oh,
where's my thing over there?
Oh, hang on. Is there a ring on that? It looks like a glass.
Oh, mine. It's where the sticker was.
Oh, okay.
Well, then I took it off.
You're like, oh my god.
Sorry. I have papers. Oops, if I can get to the camera, like flaming papers.
This one says that Sookie's lover Eric and his child Pam are plotting something in secret.
Dun dun dun.
Right, and we're all going to say that we're not going to read it until near the end of October, but really we're going to start reading it over this weekend.
No, I'm not starting to do it this weekend.
I gotta dive into House of Leaves.
Yeah, House of Leaves.
I think we'll be distracted by that. Watch us all finish House of Leaves like in a week, and then you're like, all right, now it's time for Sookie.
Or I'll be like, this House of Leaves is making my head explode. I'm going to read Sookie.
Oh, yeah. That could happen.
So we don't have a short story after this one.
No, not until the end.
Yeah. Oh,
and there's 2. At least according to that little chart thing you put on the Discord.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at just now. So the last 2 are after the last book. So, let's Sookie this month. That's pants.
We've got House of Leaves to get through.
I know that's true, but
that's about this thick. And it's upside down. It's on its side.
Jack's saying she might have to dive in. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I think
I'll probably read it today and tomorrow.
I think it was Jackie that was encouraging me to get into that because she kept posting all of these like comments, and I'm like, I couldn't listen to the comments until I read it, so I was like, I'm gonna jump in.
Yeah, and I think Alice is joining in this month as well because we're at the point where I think Alice might have just been up to around then. Oh, thanks, Jack, but we've got them.
I've read it before, so I read it not too long before me and Simon started going out, and like I was properly geeking out about it because it's one of the coolest, most interesting books I've ever read, and like nobody else I know had read it. And then see, when I met Simon, I was like, oh, I have just finished this book, blah blah blah, and he was like, fuck off, I've read that. And I was like, oh, no way. So that was it. We became soulmates at that moment, just because we had heard to this really obscure book. So it's going to be a reread for me, but I can't wait. And Simon's going to read it with us as well.
And we're having a live chat about House of Leaves when we'll finish it.
We'll have to.
With Simon.
With Simon.
I'm not chairing that.
He'll make
it's on your channel.
Okay.
Make him go in another room. So he can do his little skits.
Yes, I know. God, I just dread to imagine like what he's going to do for this one. Like, am I just going to come in and like he's going to have turned like the library into something weird, and I'm going to be like, "What have you done?"
Be full of leaves.
I dread to think. Jack says she'll watch her live for that. Well, thank you very much for joining me, guys. It's been great as usual to chat, and thank you, Jack, for being in the comments.
Yay!
Jack's painting a house though. We've been disturbing her.
Get the audiobook on while you're painting. That's what I did when I decorated the place. I got through the entire Raven cycle decorating my living room and my hall. It was great.
I had a cleaning job a few years ago, and I listened to the Raven cycle like back to back 3 times, no joke. That's how much I loved it. I was like, well, I listened to it years and years ago, and then I was like, I need something familiar. And then I forgot how much I loved it, and I was like, this was so amazing. So then I started all over again. And I was like, each experience was like to die for. Not literally.
So good. This has been awesome. Thank you, Jack.
Thank
well,
you.
enjoy your day, everybody. Thank you for joining us as usual.
Yay. Bye.